wet sidewalk and cried. Why had Daddy screamed at me? I didn't do anything wrong. Little girl, are you all right? I looked up. A man in his early 40s stared down at me. He was pale as the moon, his eyes round and dark as the swampy lake at night. I gasped, but I didn't feel too scared. Maybe a small fright, but I still felt peace. I sniffled. Daddy got mad at me. I don't know what I did wrong. He started screaming and then smacked me hard on the face. The man continued to look at her with no expression on his face. His reached down and touched her cheek lightly. It was red as blood. He suddenly looked hungry. He smiled. Why don't I take you home? Everything will be all right. He held my hand softly and stood me up. I smiled back and walked along with him into the fog that engulfed us like fire. The early morning news said that a little girl had died 2 hours later after she had been beaten up. She hadn't died from the beatings. Her throat was slit across with a sharp knife. Her father and mother had died in the same way. Their throats were sliced open. Police think that the father might have killed the child and the mother and then himself to escape from the guilt. But there was no sign of a knife that had been used to kill them. 2 old ladies were watching the news and felt grief for the girl and her mother. They only felt scorn and hate toward the father. Then one of the old ladies said, "Isn't it strange that they died, with their throats slit?" How is that strange? Well, you see, a friend of mine told me that a man had killed himself with a knife just 2 days ago. He said that the poor fellow had been discouraged with his life. He had no money. His wife deserted him, and his children had died of leukemia. Before he died, he left a note saying that he would kill anyone that was suffering through life as he was. It was only too bad that he wouldn't have the chance to do so now. He was a depressed man, all confused. Isn't it lucky, though, that he now doesn't have the chance to do what he wanted to do? Yes, it is. The poor fellow. What did he look like? Well, he was described as a man in his early middle age, pale as death as if no sun ever got through to him, and his eyes dark as the swampy lake in the night. One snowy, bitterly cold December night, a woman was driving home alone from a Christmas party. She had not had that much to drink, but she was very tired. The old road she was driving on was very dark and lonely, and it was surrounded by a forest. The woman groaned as she realized she was almost out of gas. She pulled over into a gas station a couple miles down the road. When she went in to pay, no self-serve here, the clerk was acting very weird. He filled her tank, then grabbed her and pulled her off to the side. "There's a problem with your card, and you need to come in so we can figure it out." The lady was scared now, and it didn't help when, after dragging her inside, he pulled a knife. The lady didn't stick around to find out why. She rushed to her car and sped off. In her rear-view mirror, she saw him get into his pickup truck and follow her. She was very scared now. Every few minutes, he turned on his high beams, and her car was flooded with light. Eventually, in a last, desperate attempt to lose him, she veered left and then quickly made a screeching turn right onto the private road that led to her house. It worked. Now that she could relax, she listened to the radio. The announcer informed the audience that there was an escaped convict who was in for a mass murder he had committed. He was missing his right hand, and in its place, he wore a hook. She was already scared enough, so tried to ignore this, although she thought in the back of her mind that it may be the gas station guy. Then she remembered. She had to babysit that night. She hurried home, and when she got out, she stared in horror at a hook hanging from her door. Now she knew it was the gas station guy. She was glad she escaped that guy. She walked inside. At least he didn't follow me, she thought. She could finally relax. She would put the kids to bed, then call the police and tell them what happened. It wasn't urgent, or so she thought, because she didn't know where he was anyways. When she put the children to bed, she didn't bother to turn on the lights, but she noticed a creepy clown statue. How could you like that, she thought. Oh well, it's their house. When she went downstairs to watch some TV, she thought she saw footprints besides hers leading away from her car. She was tired, so she ignored it. She forgot all about her little run-in at the gas station. She was just drifting to sleep when the phone rang. Maybe it's the parents, and I can go home soon. At least I live only few blocks down. It wasn't the parents. An unfamiliar voice spoke to her. "I'm coming to kill you soon." Heavy breathing, then a dial tone. She thought nothing of it, just a prank call. When it happened again, and he replaced soon with "in a few minutes," she got scared. "If it's my friends, I'll kill them." A little while later, just when she was getting into the television program, she thought she saw a clown standing just outside her window. She called a neighbor, but they didn't see anything outside the house. "Man, I'm so tired I'm hallucinating," she thought. Not 10 seconds after she hung up, the phone rang again. It was the stranger. "I'm almost there," he said. Now the girl was scared. This wasn't one of her friends. They wouldn't go this far with it. She called the police and informed them of what had happened. The policeman on the other end told her that they would call back after they traced his next call. The girl went to the kitchen and grabbed a butcher knife. She was freaked out. She sat huddled in the corner and completely forgot about the kids. Then her stomach dropped. The phone began to ring. She sat there, staring at it, not wanting to answer it. But she had to, so the police could trace it. "Hello?" she said feebly. "It won't be long now," he said. The girl was scared to tears. The police called. "Get out of the house. Those calls are coming from a cell phone upstairs." The girl screamed when she heard a door open upstairs and saw a bloody clown walking down the stairs. She ran out and down the road. She ran into the police cars. They found the killer and confirmed that the killer was the escaped one they were looking for. They found a grocery bag with a knife, clown wig, and cell phone upstairs. The kids were dead, with blood splattered all over the walls. The girl realized that the killer was in her car, and that was the reason for the gas station clerk's odd behavior. Those were the killer's footprints, and he was standing right behind her, not outside the window. It was his hook. When they loaded him into the police car, he said, "Call you back later." That night, at her home, of course, the girl was so scared she could not sleep. Then, as she was watching the news, a breaking story came in. The policemen taking the convicted murderer back to jail were found dead, and the killer was nowhere in sight. The girl started to cry. "Oh no!" She ran downstairs, only to find the door slightly open, and big clown shoe-sized, bloody and snowy footprints came into her house. She turned around, and the phone rang. There once was a girl named Rose. She grew up in a loving family and led a peaceful life. That was until her 13th birthday. Rose and her parents were driving home from her birthday dinner. It was late at night, and Rose was happily chatting away to her parents. It was bad luck that her father was concentrating on what Rose was saying instead of focusing on the road. Her mother screamed, "Look out!" That was when Rose's father turned around to see the two bright beams of a truck's headlights rushing towards them. A split second later, the sound of screaming brakes and grinding metal filled Rose's ears. The reports all said that Rose was lucky to be alive. While her parents were killed on impact, she only suffered minor cuts and bruises, but the major damage was on the inside. Rose blamed herself for her parents' death. She was the one talking, which distracted her father. She was the reason they were dead. Rose was taken in by an orphanage. She was still beating herself up for what happened and refused to talk. Filled with remorse, she visited her parents' graves every Sunday. She would bring roses so that her parents would know that it was her that visited. She was an outcast at the orphanage. Some were scared of her, while others would tease her for being weird. A group of boys were especially nasty. They would follow her when she went to the graveyard on Sundays. They would attack her and torture her, knowing that she would suffer in silence. One week, they took it too far. They took the roses she had laid on her parents' graves and shoved them down her throat, suffocating her. Realizing what they had done, they quickly took her body and buried her. Then things started to happen. One by one, the boys that had killed her started to see her in their dreams, and when they were alone, it would become silent. Then, a week after her death, one of the boys were found dead with roses down his throat, and he was surrounded with a ring of red rose petals. The next two boys suffered the same fate, one day after the next. The final boy was laying awake in bed to escape the nightmares when she appeared. She was wearing a white gown, stained with blood, and she was holding a bunch of red roses. She staggered towards him with a malevolent grin on her face. He went to scream, but couldn't. She was making him suffer the way she did. She started to sing slowly, in a voice that sounded like nails on a blackboard. Ring, a ring around the roses, a pocket full of posies. Ashes, ashes, we all fall down. During the song, the boy fell to his knees and struggled to breathe. He took his last breath, then was still. She whispered under her breath, "We all fall down."